that to me is a no-brainer. He's taking action to support this community, and it's very strong, decisive action. By contrast, the Prime Minister, who is marching in the Pride Parade, voted against that motion.
That's Conservative immigration critic Michelle Rempel on CBC's Power and Politics on Thursday. She's reacting to the defeat of a motion she put forward that would have made permanent funding for LGBTQ refugees for a pilot project. The project helps people looking for refugee status in Canada due to persecution based on sexual orientation, gender, or HIV status. It's time again for the Sunday Scrum. Joining me today, Susan Riley and John Ibbotson in Ottawa and Vicky Mochama in Toronto. Susan, what do you think the logic was for the Liberal government to shoot this down?
I think it was weak, and I think they end up looking. Bad. They never really provided a proper explanation. That being said, I mean, there's no doubt that the Conservatives are playing politics with this too. Michelle Rempel wants to kind of set down a marker, so with the view to the next election campaign, so that nobody can accuse the Conservatives of being homophobic or against minorities. That being said, she personally has been a champion of LGBTQ people for quite a while, so she's genuine. I think this was a bit of mischief on the part of the Conservatives, completely mishandled by the Liberals. I think in the end the Liberals will create a permanent avenue for LGBTQ people from around the world to apply to come to Canada. I think the graver problem, especially in African countries, is the lack of staffing. Canadian staffing down there, the incredible lengths of 6 years it takes to process an application. I mean, people there really are in fear of their lives, and that's intolerable, but that's a huge commitment of funds, which didn't really enter into the debate very much.
Well, among the reasons that were provided for the lack of support on part of the Liberals was that they were saying it was too short notice, and there was a funding implication that's not typical for a motion. So let's hear Rempel's response to that.
I have raised this issue with the minister, I don't know, countless times. You can, in the estimates process, when he's at committee, in the House in question period, we have been demanding this for over a year, and frankly, I didn't think this was going to be a partisan issue. With regard to cost, they've just spent $200 million to process work visas for people who are illegally crossing the border from the United States. They spent $8 million on a hockey rink outside of Parliament Hill. I think $50,000 to save the lives of LGBTQ.
But they're not
something
saying
that's
no.
reasonable.
But Vicky, your reaction?
I mean, I think it's an interesting distinction that she's making, which is to say that the people who are walking across the border are illegal, but LGBTQ refugees elsewhere are the ones that primarily need support. And I do not understand, and have yet to understand from Ms. Rempel, how it is she makes this distinction. If we know, for example, that there are people who are flying to the United States from Nigeria and walking straight across the border, how do we make the distinction that some of those are not specifically LGBTQ refugees? There has been a massive support for people who are LGBTQ specific from Ms. Rempel, and we'll set aside for now the larger Conservative Party. At the same time, there has not been that support for refugees overall. And so I think that's a distinction that she's making that on the ground doesn't necessarily work. LGBTQ refugees covers people who, are forced to go under gender reassignment surgery in Iran, people who are in Jamaica who can't exist the way they want to be, people who go from Uganda to Kenya looking for a better life, but then because their country of origin is different from their country of departure, it doesn't work. But these are the same issues that refugees of all stripes face everywhere. And there has not been that wider support for refugees from the Conservative Party up to and including Ms. Rempel. And so I think it's important to support LGBTQ refugees because their needs are different and very specific, but so are so many other groups. And we're not seeing that broader level of support. If there's a conservative approach to refugee issues, especially the most vulnerable sets of refugees, I would love to hear it someday.
John, let's talk about this issue of the Liberals wanting to make this their issue. So the Conservative leader, Andrew Scheer, has said that he supports supporting LGBTQ communities. However, he's not going to march in the Pride Parade. Does that matter?
I don't think it does. Now, look, the Liberals have
done great work on this file since they came to office, and I've had high praise for them. I was there in the House when Justin Trudeau made that apology. The compensation for public servants in the past who were harassed and lost their jobs, it's a great idea. The expunging of the criminal records of people who were convicted back in the days when just being gay was illegal, all great ideas. But we have an opportunity here. There is bipartisan consensus on the need to create a specific stream of refugee claimants who are LGBTQ because they are subject to sudden purges, to sudden pogroms from their government in a ways that religious minorities can be as well. And we need to have the facilities in place to respond swiftly. I do think that this is a case where it doesn't matter whether you march in the Pride Parade or not. It doesn't matter whether you're a Catholic or a Baptist or just an agnostic or not. We have conservatives and liberals who want to work together to advance this file. Why don't we just do it?
Susan, you think this is going to hurt the Liberals come next election?
No, I doubt it. But I strongly disagree with John. I think that if you are committed to these issues, you should make yourself present. March in Pride parades, and Doug Ford, same for him. Andrew Scheer is claiming that when the Pride parade in Regina happens, he's got other community involvements or obligations. He also has said, and I believe Doug Ford has said the same thing, that while uniformed police officers are not welcome in Pride parades, they won't march either. This to me just looks and sounds like a pretext. I think they just don't want to irritate those members of their base who are still have trouble with this issue and for various reasons don't like Pride parades. I think they should be there. I think symbolically it's important, and it really makes you wonder what they really think.
I agree with Susan in that I think it's an odd type of pinkwashing to say that we're for LGBTQ refugees, but once they get here, if they are Nigerian or Jamaican or in any way black LGBTQ refugees, they now face a different set of circumstances, and that often has to do with how they interact with police. And so for Andrew Scheer to say, I've put a motion of a plan in place for LGBTQ refugees from abroad, but I don't support any criticism that they might have when they get here. I think that's a really bizarre stance to take, and I would say that, as a member of the LGBT community, I would say, I don't know that you're truly for us. I think you want to win a particular political point.